Nightreign isn't dead. Steam shows like 30k daily players, but FromSoftware treated this game like a side project, and of course it was. However, it did get those 30k players like daily on this side project. It was very much a popular game, and yet they just kind of let it go. That like mismatch is the story I want to tell in this video. I'm not going to be one of those guys who looks at Twitch viewership or YouTube numbers and declares a game dead because streamers have just moved on. Steam charts like actively show this game does get players, and a game is alive if people are playing it, not if influencers just like stop farming it for content. The FromSoftware B team deserves more credit than I think the development bigwigs at FromSoftware give them. Every time they're allowed to make something without Miyazaki's oversight, they deliver something weird, experimental, and just fun. People clown on Dark Souls 2, but Miyazaki himself said it's his favorite in the series, and just openly admitted he didn't even want to make a Dark Souls 3. He was fine letting a different design philosophy cap off the world that he created and started. Then they made Sekiro, probably the hardest and most flow state inducing game From has ever produced, which is innovated like gameplay from the Soulsborne design. And again, that was also polarized at release. And now we have Nightreign, a dynamic roguelite Soulsborne hybrid that actually just breaks the mold instead of recycling the same formula for the 6th time in a row. And that's not to say that Soulsborne games aren't fun. They are, but like once you've played enough of them, they start, just kind of blending together, which isn't bad since that's seemingly what the fans want, but Nightreign just doesn't do that. It specifically set itself apart and feels unique, so much so that everything that we were hearing about this game when it was like coming out had fans polarized before the game even was released. The gameplay is way more interesting than the same game with a new coat of paint and more polished mechanics like that were in the game since Demon's Souls. Nightreign's closest genre adjacent game is Raven's Watch, which I've played, except Nightreign is just like better. Obviously, it's got more dynamic builds, more interesting combat loops, and more replayability. It should have been like a slam dunk for FromSoftware to keep updating this game or giving it like a DLC that it actually deserved. So why did From abandon Nightreign and show it no love while Raven's Watch gets gameplay changing updates like at the most consistent like intervals that you can ever have? Why did From tack on a DLC that feels more like it was made out of obligation because of how successful it was rather than passion like every other DLC they have made? There were no new DLC weapons despite promising them several times, a second map that's just a convoluted mess, only 2 new characters, and one of them has like the most boring mechanic imaginable, while the other one is actually pretty interesting. I do not think the I get my ult when others ult is interesting at all. This game has reused assets everywhere, so why is it when they get to make something wholly original, they make the DLC feel antithetical to what the game even is? Nightreign deserved better support than this. I hope that it's like the executives that came in and told them to make it in such a way, because I don't know how the people that made Limveld also made this one. These maps are like completely, absolutely different and not feeling like they were played by actual gamers. Nightreign's story exists to facilitate gameplay, and that's fine. Baldur's Gate 3 does like the exact same thing, except Baldur's Gate 3's story pretends it's deeper than it is. Nightreign doesn't need to lie to you to make you like want to play the game. It gives you just enough lore to understand the world without drowning in exposition or anything. The DLC did not need to be anything special or lore shattering. Unlike Baldur's Gate 3, Nightreign's gameplay is actually inspired. So why make a game this interesting and then refuse to support it? I'm not asking for like 4 DLCs or some massive expansion, but like a fully fleshed out DLC just makes way more sense than what we got. While I was playing this game, I was super disappointed whenever I found out that only one map existed with like a little bit of like newer zones added on. But imagine if the DLC released a Caelid style zone or a Haligtree style zone, Mountaintops of the Giant style zone, or even Farum Azula. If they wanted to make a convoluted map, that's the one to do it for, since it's literally outside of the flow of time. Why not throw in a nod to Placidus X's god watching us like the Eye in the Fissure of the Fog? Like, Nightreign's world is perfect for this level of expansion. Instead, we got one messy map and a currency locked travel system to go back to the main map in case you didn't like it. So they forced it onto players generally. That's just some bullshit, because the way that you used to rotate through, the shifting earths was by sleeping at your bed. You can just keep doing that over and over again, or just once and it will just reset the world to how you got it whenever you were level 1. Why make that change? I don't think that the same people that made the original would have done that, unless I'm just wrong, and then this video has a way bigger problem. FromSoftware's B team just loves gimmicks. Usually they're good gimmicks, like Dark Souls 2's philosophy of just making the journey harder than the actual boss to turn the dynamic that was found in Dark Souls 1's the gameplay on its head. But Nightrein's bosses lean too hard into the run away from the problem design that was found in the lower slog of just the boss gauntlet found in Elden Ring. Augur drops seismic nukes, you just have to run away. Sentient pest barrows into the ground and then launches barrages at you, run around until it stops. Gaping Jaw creates like a giant arena-wide storm that like just does obscene tick damage, run away, then jump back into the fight. Night Aspect tears open exploding zones, you just gotta run from safe zone to safe zone. Half of the bosses feel like stall mechanics instead of set pieces, which is what I think the goal was, but some bosses do work. Gaping Jaw, Night Aspect, Fissure of the Fog, Dark Drift Knight, but others just kind of feel like filler, and they're not really memorable in this game. I think only like 4 bosses, not even, maybe like 3 bosses were hard, like actually hard in a fair way. The Dreglord, he's just like bullshit all the way through. I gave 3 attempts to that guy, and I didn't like any attempt. The first one was like low-key botched because my team was like dog shit, but I was max level and I got one shot by just bullshit. 3 of my teammates got one shot too, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. And then I tried again and we never even got to the boss because the level design of the last map is just abysmal, dude. Well, Nightrein's like combat system is dynamic, but the DLC just doesn't capitalize on this in any way. The DLC costs $15. I'm not mad about the price, but being so low did fill me with dread whenever I saw that. Now though, a year after release, I'm just mad at the missed potential. I put 100 hours on this game. I would have loved to put more, but the game gets super repetitive because of this lack of just dynamic content. And I'm not willing to sit there and spend hours going through the deep depths over and over and over again, doing basically the same things over and over and over again, and having the dynamic gameplay come from my bad teammates rather than having interesting weapons and new locations and new things to do. Why am I only getting basically 2 maps in a game that asks to be replayed infinitely? That's just not fun to me. We could have had 4 bosses, like 4 actual nightmare bosses or whatever they're called, 6 night ending bosses. We could have had DLC weapons, multiple new areas in the game, like new maps. They could have added a crystal crafting, mechanic for build dynamics, which is what I thought they were going to do whenever I saw the different like combinations of like the same crystals that you could get in the game. I just figured, oh well, I'm seeing the same like randomized combinations. It kind of seems bad if I have to hope that I get a crystal that is randomized to my liking. Maybe they'll add a system wherever I get to build it later in the game. And these like changes just add more roguelite variety. Instead, we got one map with reused assets that actually feel like it's reused assets because it just doesn't feel like it's supposed to flow that way, rather than what Limveld felt like because it just felt natural to go through that world. And then we get 2 characters on top of that. I like the Scholar and I like his dynamics. You can make him super strong if you actually engage with the shop, which was one of my biggest complaints about it before he came out. I was like, the shop kind of feels useless because either you get the good shop or you never actually go see what the shop has. Because there's 2 shops in the game. One of them is kind of useless unless you want to check out weapons, and the other one is imperative that you go visit it because he has good talismans. So it just kind of felt useless. Now with the Scholar, you actually have to engage in that system. But the other character, it just doesn't feel like that. Like I said, I don't find the mechanic of my teammate ulted, so now my ult is charged and I can do a shit ton of damage to be interesting. It just kind of feels like the devs were restricted. At least that's how the game elements that I'm seeing here make it feel like, because we're going from a dynamic reused asset game that actually was fun and inspired to a tacked on DLC that literally is worse in every single way. They could have added new modifiers for maps, new build paths, more interesting characters. Even if it was hard to balance like the potential crafting combinations that I'm talking about for those crystals, who cares really? Because they abandoned it anyway. Like, I agree with the Nightreign is dead sentiment, at least. Like, not because the player base is gone, but because like FromSoft killed the momentum of the game themselves. This is their biggest blunder in terms of letting the fans down. Under every single Elden Ring post, it's just people asking for a better DLC or just doing something with Nightreign. And now Dustbloods is coming out looking suspiciously similar to Nightreign, and I just don't care, really. It's a Switch 2 exclusive, and that's an even bigger who cares, and Nightreign just soured me on From's willingness to just innovate. I'm bored of the Soulsborne formula. I want them to evolve. Nightreign was evolution, and they just shelved it without a second thought. If this is their mentality going forward, refine the same game forever, ignore innovation, then Nightreign just wasn't a blunder. It was a warning, and it was a warning to us, the players that wanted these dynamic gameplay elements to just be continued from the series going forward, and it just kind of shows that they're not really interested in doing that. And like, I don't understand why the DLC was so lackluster to begin with, whenever this game was made with a certain design philosophy that it had to be made in, and then it just like seems like that philosophy was just completely abandoned whenever it actually became popular. Like, some bigwig executive came in and was like, yeah, this is what you were doing, but you don't have the same pull as Miyazaki, so I'm in charge now. This is what I want it to be. I think I really talked about this as much as I kind of want to. There's nothing to really discuss any further about what I want the game to be versus what it is. So if you like the video, like, comment, and subscribe. I will be uploading at least once a week or things of this nature where I'm just talking about things in the gaming sphere that I don't like or dislike or like, and I just kind of give my thoughts on it. In the meantime, go and look at my most recent video series, which is the Baldur's Gate 3 review, and why I don't really like it, and I don't think that it's actually as good as people say it is.